You're listening to Cottontail's podcast, part of the Silicon Valley Black Project, which produced the documentary film A Place at the Table about the Black pioneers of Silicon Valley. A Place at the Table can be viewed for rent on Vimeo.com on demand /A Place at the Table STEM. Through Cottontail's podcast, the Silicon Valley Black Project will continue to recognize the contributions made by African Americans. We will be featuring African American professionals, technologists in the fields of engineering, administration, and entrepreneurial pursuits from the past and present. We're talking to retired business executive turned writer John Hill. Before becoming a writer, John Hill led the Silicon Valley human resources professionals in implementing affirmative action programs in some of the largest corporations in Silicon Valley, and finally for the city and county of Los Angeles. Well, since you've been retired, I'm sure you had time to think about who you are, what you are. Obviously, when I read your first book, I said, "Oh yeah, this guy's done some stuff." But were you born in Fresno County?
No, I was born in Hawthorne, Nevada.
Okay. All right. So, what brought you to California, my dear?
My family worked for the government during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
The government would send you to certain different places to work. So they happened to be in Nevada.
Okay.
when I was born,
Mm-hmm.
and but we came back to Sacramento. They said in about 3 months. So I only stayed in Nevada for about 3 months, and then they lived in Sacramento, and then the war ended, and so they lost all those jobs working for the government.
Yeah.
And so that's when we ended up as migrant farm laborers.
Now, what year were you born?
I was born in 45, 3 months before the war ended.
All kind of trouble, weren't you? Just your mama lost her job, your daddy lost his job, and here comes.
He worked there too. They all worked on the defense. They all worked for the Department of Defense.
What child were you? What number were you in the?
I was number. Let's see. There were 6 older than me, and there were 6. I think there was, and then I was number 6.
Okay, and then how many were born after you?
4.
4 more. Okay, so 10 children in the family.
There were 10 others, but my brother Glenn Arthur, he passed away in 1947.
Oh.
He drowned.
Oh, did he? Oh my goodness! What, in a river or swimming pool? What?
Yeah, he drowned in the aqueduct right there in Los Banos.
How old was he when he passed?
6.
Oh my, that's too bad. That had to be horrible for the family.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So you're in Los Banos working. When did you get to Fresno? How did you get to Fresno?
Fresno was a long ways off. From the time I was born,
Mm-hmm.
because following the crops, we were mainly in all of those cities, the small cities: Fireball, Los Banos,
Mm-hmm.
Huron,
Hanford.
Riverdale.
You ever go to Riverdale?
Yeah, we lived in Riverdale. That's where we were, and so my mother left in 1952 or 53. She left, and my father was trying to take care of 9 children by himself.
Mm.
And then he got into some trouble with the police, and he was arrested.
Mm.
And he told them, I have 9 children, and they're out on a migrant labor camp in Huron. And so the county of Fresno came out and got all 9 of us and put us under the county of Fresno, and then they put us in a foster home.
Wow.
That's how I ended up in a Fresno in a foster home.
In a foster home for them. So tell me about that experience there. How was yours?
We arrived as 9 children in 1955.
Mm.
And I still remember my foster mother coming around the corner there at the welfare office. And we looked up, and she came up and said, "My name is Mrs. Seals, and I'm going to be your mother." And we were like, oh. And all 9 of us, 8 of us, because Thomas was living with my grandmother at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So 8 of us we all get in her car and we all drive out to her house. We met my foster dad. He was Reverend James Seals. He was a pastor here in Fresno.
Mm-hmm.
They were the greatest people that I ever met in my life.
Mm.
They took 8 children, never split them up, and would not separate them. And they raised us very religiously, but with love and kindness and gentleness. And the first morning after we had arrived, I remember we all went into their bedroom and jumped into bed. And then the next day we did the same thing. They kept saying, "Why you guys always come into our room in the mornings?" We said, "We want to make sure y'all still here." Because everybody who took us had left us. So our daddy had left, my mama had left, our grandma. So we were like, let's go make sure they're not gone yet. And so they said, we're not going anywhere. But when you're raised by foster parents, you have to, at some point in time, you come to the point where they become your parents. Yeah. And it took me quite a while. Because I was always skeptical of something. They're going to do this, and to me, they're going to hurt me this way. And Mom sit and told me one day, she said, the only thing you have to do is to go to school and get good grades. You don't have to work. If you don't want to, you don't have to do this. You just have to obey, go to church and go to school and get good grades. And so as a foster kid with 9 years in foster care and the first 3 to 4 years of grammar school, I went to 20 schools.
Wow.
I went to 20 different grammar schools because we were migrants. We moved. We didn't stay in one place. Mm-hmm. So we migrated all the way up to Oregon, Washington State, and all the way back down again, all the way to Bakersfield. And so when I learned to read at 5 is how I kept up, because I could read.
Okay.
And so I would take books and I just keep reading and reading and reading. And then in those days when you went to grammar school, they gave you books, remember?
Right.
You got books and paper, pencils, you got everything.
Right.
Yeah, you got it. And so I would take all of that and put it in the back of the trunk of the car. Mm-hmm. I had a spot in the trunk of my dad's car, and I put all my stuff there and all my books and papers. And so wherever I went, I would take out my paper and I'd be writing. I didn't know what I was writing, but I was trying to keep up.
Yes.
That's what people need to be aware of. Some of these little foster kids, some of them come out angry.
Yeah.
And then some come out extremely motivated. Mm. My brothers came out, some of them came out angry. I came out motivated. When I went to foster care, I said, this is my opportunity. And Pop Seal's house, they had a whole library. I was like I was in heaven.
Absolutely.
I sat in the living room in the back of the couch with a book reading, and I read all of their books. I read the Encyclopedia Britannica. I read the Book of Knowledge. I did the National Geographics. I read the Bible 3 times. And so that's where my love of writing came from, was from my love of reading. I didn't look at it as a problem.
Yes.
This is my opportunity. Mm-hmm. And when my foster mother told me all I had to do was go to school, I didn't have to worry about all this other stuff. Man, Kathy, I went from the 3rd grade through the 12th grade and missed a day of school one day. You have to stay focused. You're not the same as the other little kids who got their parents and got a nice house. That's what I said, okay, I've got to take advantage of every opportunity presented to me, because that opportunity may not come back. And so I sit with my foster parents and I would study and study and study, because I said, if I leave this foster care, I'm not going to repeat a class. So when I was in the 4th grade, I was helping my sister who was in the 8th grade. I was doing her homework. I was doing my brother's homework in the 7th grade, because you're not going to flunk me again. Y'all need to understand that. It's not a fear that they're going to take me away from here. Yeah. I got to be ready. I don't know how I had that in me or where it came from.
I think it's self-motivation.
I no idea.
self-motivation, and just pure intelligence.
Yeah.
Those two things. Well, you called yourself the dreamer in the field for a reason. You were dreaming about getting out of those fields.
I knew that at 18, you have to go out, you have to leave foster care.
Okay.
So at 17, I start preparing. Okay, I'm going to be 18. If they kick me out, where am I going? So I called my godmother, who lived in Los Angeles. And I said, if they kick me out of foster care at 18, can I come live with you and finish high school there? And she said, yeah, come on. They're all set up. So one thing I did when I was on the migrant labor camp, Kathy, I would sit down and talk to the winos. And I say, why did you become a wino? And I said, if you could do it all over again, what would you do? They said, I would go as far as I could in school. Get as much education as you can get. And he said, if you do that, you'll make it. So I learned from these folks. I didn't sit out there and make fun of them. I went over and talked to them. And because I wanted to know what are some of the steps that I'm going to have to go through so I don't end up doing this for the rest of my life.
So even as a young child, you saw the humanity in these men.
And that these were people who something happened because they didn't get, as a baby, you didn't start out this way. So something happened. Cullen County of Fresno came to my foster mother and said, we like him. And we think he has an opportunity to go somewhere and to be something. So we're going to pay an extra year for you to keep him till he graduates high school.
How wonderful.
So the city of Fresno paid my foster parents to take care of me for 1 year until I graduated high school. She said we talked to his teachers, we talked to the principal, and everybody said he's an outstanding student, he's an outstanding young man, and we would like for him to graduate from Central High School. So that's what happened. But I had it set up. See, I wasn't waiting till I said, okay, I know they're gonna kick me out at 18, and I haven't graduated high school because I won't graduate because I repeated to second grade, so I'm not gonna graduate until I'm 19. Right. So I got to figure out what to do.
Well, how wonderful that someone within the system was looking and watching and keeping track of you.
Right.
Well, the fact that you stayed in Fresno County that long gave them a chance to track you, I guess.
Right.
Okay.
And my social worker was a very nice lady, and she told me we need to keep him. Don't kick him out of the system. Let him stay until he graduates. So they had me stay with my foster parents until I graduated.
And then you joined the Air Force right out of high school.
I was watching TV and one night when I was a senior in high school, and it said, if you go into the military, for every year you spend in the military, we'll give you a year of college.
Bingo!
So I said, I need to find a 4-year military. So the Air Force. And so when I went and I joined the Air Force for 4 years to get my 4 years so I could go my GI Bill.
When you came back after 4 years of Air Force, you come back to Fresno, or did you come to the Bay Area?
I came back to Fresno. I started going to a business college. Okay. Before I started regular college. I went to a business college for 2 years. I got a job working at a company called United Vintners. They were a winemaking business. Mm. And they only hired me, I figured out later, because they wanted to pass the government affirmative action contract because they had no black as management. So they hired me as an entry-level manager. Then after they passed, then they fired me. And then my brother-in-law said, I can get you a job in Palo Alto if you come up there. Maddie and I packed up our stuff and went to San Jose, went to live with him in East Palo Alto. Mm-hmm. I got a job in Mountain View working at his company. They wanted to hire me as a person working on the floor. And I told them I'll work on the floor until I find a job working in what I want to work in. Mm-hmm. So they came back, they called me up and said, we have a payroll clerk position open. And I said, I'll take it. Mm-hmm. So I became the payroll clerk, working for the personnel manager. The personnel manager left, and then the vice president, who I became very good friends with, told me, I want you to be the personnel manager, but you don't have a degree. So I told him I'll go get one. I went to San Jose City, San Jose State, and University of San Francisco, got my degree, and he held that job for me.
How many years?
4.
I'll be damned.
Everybody wanted that job, and he said no.
So were you working in the job while you went to school?
Yes.
So you went, okay.
He hired me as assistant personnel manager, and then just before I graduated, he promoted me to the personnel manager.
Okay.
And then I got my degree, and then I got calls from all kind of companies, and then I went to work for FMC.
Yeah.
I started on my degree in 1972, and I graduated in 77. And so
that's pretty good for full-time, working full-time.
All at night.
Yeah, that's pretty
working
good.
8 hours a day, all at night.
Now, kids are in school that long now, going full-time. The way these schools are set up.
Yeah. His name was Terry Brown. He was the best friend I ever had. And he was white. Mm-hmm. And he and I became very close. And they would say, he said, no, I'm going to see if he's going to do what he said he was going to do. Mm-hmm. And that is graduate college. And I did. So that was his motivation, make me stay motivated to graduate college. And so
that was a twofer. 2 people learned right there. You learned how to stick to it, get it done, and he learned, do not judge a book by a cover.
That's right.
This little brown man is gonna do it, and you did it.
And he kept his word. He gave me that job.
All right.
And I was a junior in college. He promoted me to personnel manager. How much has America missed by discriminating against Black people, or Latino people, or Asian people? Where would we be as a country if everybody was given this chance to go the full capacity of what they could do?
We would be so far ahead.
No country on the world that could touch us.
That's true.
But racism and prejudice held this country back.
That's our Achilles heel. And that is the thing that's eating us alive right now.
If I become the head of something, I'm still an American.
Thank you. And maybe I earned the right to be there.
But when I went into FMC as an affirmative action officer, I worked for the plant manager, but the assistant plant manager put up a huge Confederate flag in his office.
What was his purpose?
His employees came to me and said, did you know he put up a Confederate flag in his office? I said, no, he didn't. Yes, he did. I walk into his office. I mean, it was the whole wall, Kathy.
Yeah.
Behind his desk, the whole wall. And I told him, that comes down. You can't make me take that down. So I walk into the plant manager's office. I said, I'm giving my resignation. He goes, why? Either that flag comes down or my resignation stays on your desk. And then I'll be at OFCCP this afternoon. Uh-huh. He walked into his office and he tells him, that comes down.
Were you the affirmative action officer at FMC?
I was the first affirmative action officer at FMC.
How many other companies were you the first?
I was the first at FMC, Plantronics in Santa Cruz, Rome Corporation, ROLM, the first Black affirmative action officer for the county of Santa Clara, and I was the first Black affirmative action officer for the county of Los Angeles.
So when you got in there, Johnny, and you were the first Black affirmative officer, what changed in that organization?
In which one?
In any of them. So when you came into those companies and you were the first, what kinds of conflicts did you come into?
What I came into was a conflict of people not understanding what racism and discrimination was all about. Mm-hmm. They just felt that we hired the best and the brightest. Uh-huh. But if you don't have any Blacks, and you don't have any Latinos, and you don't have any women, are you saying that those 3 groups are not the best, are not the brightest? They can't be the best, and they can't be the brightest? Mm-hmm. Well, we just want to get the best people. Then how can you get the best people if you are leaving out 50% of the country? I say you can't. 50% of Santa Clara County is Black, Hispanics, and women.
Right.
And you don't have any. And you're saying you're getting the best. No, you're not.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting the best of what you want to recruit.
Right.
You're not getting the best of what's out there. So now I'm going to bring in women. I'm going to bring in minorities. And I want you to interview them. I'm not telling you that you have to lower your standards, but your standards must be the same that got you the job. I need an entry-level person, and he must have 10 years of experience. I said, why does he have to have 10 years? Because I got 10. What did you have when you first came here? That's how you end up, you start to get the mindset to change. Oh, I see what you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. And you also need to understand that when you and I, Kathy, became affirmative action officers, most companies didn't have job requisitions and job descriptions because they hired through word of mouth.
Right.
They hired through the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Blacks didn't live in those neighborhoods. Hispanics didn't live in those neighborhoods. So everybody they brought in was white. And so what we did as affirmative action officers, we changed all of that, all of that criteria. And what happened was that we said, well, you can find smart people at Tuskegee, at Morehouse College. Dr. King went to Morehouse. Mm-hmm. You can find them. They didn't go to Black colleges. It wasn't until Black people came into those jobs that all of a sudden they started going to the Urban League Convention, NAACP convention, women's conventions. So all of a sudden you changed the mindset. And when I left FMC, they got very upset. All the white people got upset. They said, every time we get a good person who understands and trying that, they come and take them. And so as I moved into corporate within a year, where it became over the half of the United States, it was changing that mentality and getting them to understand, I don't want you to lower your qualification. I just want the qualification to be equal. And I want you, if a Black person walks in, I want you to treat him or her the same and give them the same. See, a person can't become successful on the outside. You have to get them into the company. Mm-hmm. That's how they become successful. They're given an opportunity. And all women and minorities want is a chance at that opportunity. Right. Once you start breaking down, well, you can't fire them. Where's it written that you can't fire a Black person? Right. Well, you can get sued. I said, you can get sued for firing a white person. Right. If you and your buddy or you and your brother-in-law go fishing on Saturdays and he missed work on Friday and you don't count it, then the Black person comes in, he missed work on Friday. Then you say, well, you're missing too many days. You're not treating people fair. Right. You have to treat people fair, and then you can terminate people who are not performing. Oh, that's how it works. Yes. So yeah, I changed all of the organizations, the County of Santa Clara, County of Los Angeles. I put together my own program called Unlearning Prejudice because that was the biggest issue that people faced in this country was not unlearning racism. See, most people are prejudiced. And they around here calling everybody racist. You're racist. I say, what is a racist? You have no idea what a racist is. Racism is not about race. Racism is about power and control. Yes. And what you're looking at is a person who's prejudiced, and he turns that prejudice into action. Mm-hmm. That's called racism. In other words, you can hate me all you want. As long as you promote me and I keep my job, and I don't care if you don't like me. But if you take it out on me at work, that's discrimination. Right. And they go, I said, yes. So unlearning the prejudice that you have been taught, and don't say you haven't been taught it. Mm-hmm. We all have. My father told me, beware of white people. Don't ever trust them. Don't ever become their buddy so much that you turn and you trust everything they do because they're going to get you. That's what he told me. So I'm sitting around here waiting on these white folks to get me. And when they didn't get me, it was like, wait a minute. They're treating me fair. I mean, they're treating me, wow, wait a minute. But it's there, you know what I'm saying? Exactly. It's there. I had a white guy tell me, he goes, The reason I don't hire black people is because when I was a kid, they beat me up. Really? Black kid beat you up, so you're going to hold that against 40 million black people.
See?
And I said, when you fire a black person, that does not mean you can't hire another one. I said, you fired white people. How many white people did you fire this year? Did you go out and hire another one? Why? But if a black person does bad, we all have to walk on eggshells because if we don't, no other black person will ever get an opportunity.
Exactly. Johnny, you didn't start off as wanting to be or being a affirmative action officer, obviously, because we didn't even have, well, we had affirmative action when you probably started, but I'm sure you didn't start off as that. What led you into that field?
I'll tell you what led me into the field. I started working in personnel, and I started seeing the different issues. And then I went to San Jose State, and I took a class in affirmative action with Dr. George Whaley, who you know.
Yeah. And
Dr. Whaley taught me in that class, and I decided, and after that class, I wanted to work in affirmative action. That's where I wanted my expertise to be. So when I went to, I was working for Aero Development, and talked to Ken Coleman, who we both know, and I said, Ken, they got this job open at FMC for affirmative action officer, and he said, you need to go for that. I got the job there, and then I remember I wanted to leave affirmative action, and Ken told me, he sat me down, and he said, do not leave something that you have become an expert in. Everybody looks to you as an expert. Take this affirmative action field and you run with it. And you stay right there. Don't go into personnel. That is not your forte. Affirmative action, that's your forte. You stay right there in affirmative action. So I did.
Well, I think one of the things he saw was you weren't afraid to step up to power and speak your truth. That's one thing that is needed in a real affirmative action officer. And you're one of the few that was actually using the law to the advantage of both the company and the individuals who were being hired by the company.
I mean, I went into the county of Los Angeles, and I told my, you don't even have a letter from the board of supervisors addressing affirmative action. I said, why is that? I said, listen, I'm putting together a letter, and then I'm sending out to every department in the county that this letter will be posted on their boards. And it's going to be signed by the chair of the board. I had a Republican, he signed it. I had another, all the Democrats, of course, signed. I said, because you cannot have affirmative action if you're not behind it.
Right.
Put that together. I put together a sexual harassment report, and I had them sign that. I sent that out to every single 100,000 employees in the county of Los Angeles got a copy of a sexual harassment policy signed by the board of supervisors. I said, now that's power. They want to know, hey, wait a minute, the board signed this. This is real.
Right.
That immediately stopped 90% of the cases of affirmative action in the county. Because once they see that the board signed this, they mean, oh, man, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
I said, so it's not for me. I'm just your affirmative action officer. It has to come from you.
Right.
And I would do that with every president that I talked to. I said, when I do affirmative action training, you will be in the room. As soon as you walk in the room, I guarantee I will not have any problem teaching this class.
Right.
Every department head in the county was in my training. And so the word went out. Man, this guy is serious. That made every manager in the department come to the training. Why? The department head is sitting there.
Right. Legitimacy. Thank you.
And it was like, oh man, we got a serious one now.
That's right. We can't get out of this stuff.
This one is serious.
Yeah.
But you guys, I had a lot of people with experience. Al Cotton and Ken Coleman. I had all these guys around me, and they would be speaking to me in my head on this is how you handle this situation. Because I get into a situation, I'd call Ken, what do I do here? And he would, you do this, and this. Right. Thank you very much. Right. Al, I got this thing here. What do I do? You do this, 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 this. Thank you very much.
Right.
And people were wondering, like, where did this guy get this information from?
One phone call and we had the information we needed.
That's correct. And if somebody needed something on affirmative action, Ken, tell them, call John Hill.
Yeah.
And I'd get on fire. When Ken Coleman told me to call you on what's the issue, and I'd go through it. This is what you do. Papa was absolutely fantastic for us who coming up, and then for us teaching the other young people coming up. So
when did you start Papa? You and Ken and Bev and Perry?
Yeah, we started Papa in 7. Terry knew Ken Coleman. They met somewhere, but Terry Brown knew Ken Coleman, and he told me, you need to meet this guy. His name is Ken Coleman. You need to go have lunch with him and sit down and talk with him. So I went out, so I called him, and we set up a lunch, and I went to meet with him, and he said, I'm thinking of starting this group. And it's a black personnel group. He said, we had a South Bay, and I said, I'm in. I'm in it.
We
had a guy that worked at International Paper Company, and he quit because we wanted to call it Peninsula Association of Black Personnel Administrators. And he said his company would not pay for him because the word black was in there. And we said, we can't call it anything else. It'd be just a regular, no.
Yeah.
So Ken Coleman, myself, Bev, and Carl, we said, we're going to keep the name.
Yeah.
And none of our managers stopped paying for us to go to those lunches. They all said, we like it. So PAPA, Peninsula Association of Black Personnel Administrators, and everybody, all managers, Ken Coleman would bring his manager, I'd bring Terry Brown. They'd all come to our lunches.
Right.
And there's all these white managers sitting there with their black employees and listen to the things that we talked about and what we had to do. And anytime a black manager came into work, whether it was at Hewlett Packard, FMC, wherever, they told them about Papa. You need to join this group.
Exactly.
And that's how it took off.
Yeah.
2 things I was extremely proud of. One was my program, Unlearning Prejudice.
Yes.
Was on the president's website during the Clinton administration, and you pulled up the White House about affirmative action and the 10 best programs, training programs. Unlearning Prejudice was on there. It's one of the 10 best in the country. And the second thing is, when apartheid ended in South Africa, I met with a South African delegation on how to put affirmative action into South Africa. They all came to my office. I sat down, I met with them, and I told them how to set up the program for the nation if you were going to do affirmative action in South Africa.
And who was there?
They came to Supervisor Yvonne Burke at the county, and they said, we'd like to do affirmative action. Can you give us someone to talk to? And she said, yeah, you need to talk to our affirmative action officer, John Hill. And they all came down, and I met with about 10 of them. And they were from Mandela's transition team. And I told them this is how you would set up affirmative action in South Africa.
Did you ever get a chance to travel to South Africa to see how things were going?
No, I didn't go to. I went to South Africa, but I never found out. I never went and talked to them about how they did it.
Yeah.
Or what did they do over there in South Africa. But I was keeping in touch with one of the people there. He would write back and say, we are not sure how we're going to do this because there's still some big issues of how to do it here in this country.
Yeah.
Similar to what you've done and what they've done in the United States. But, I ran, as you have too, against a large number of black people who said I didn't need affirmative action and affirmative action hadn't done nothing for me. And blah, blah. I was at USC as a visiting professor at USC, and this black kid told me that, well, you need to understand, I don't want my job because of affirmative action. I said, how do you want your job? I wanted my job being the best qualified. I said that in America, you will never get a job. He looked at me like, I said, white people are never going to make you the best qualified. So you need to, first of all, that's what you need to understand. You will not be the best qualified.
Right.
will be qualified.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason that you didn't, there are systems now in place that make sure you get your foot in the door. See, that was, even though I say your mother and father or uncle and aunt and grandmother and grandfather were very smart, intelligent people, they couldn't get in the door.
Right.
That's the only reason they didn't become successful in corporations, because they could not get in the door. It wasn't that they were not intelligent. And so you need to understand, affirmative action opened the door so you could get in and explain yourself.
And then it was up to you to do
Yeah,
your job.
Yeah.
And the
And so-
problem was, if the other tribe is saying, yeah, but we're lowering our standard, and
That's
if you
correct.
accept that from the other tribe, then all the work we did getting you there goes for naught. So when I heard young people say, I don't want to get in for affirmative action, excuse me, that's just one way of getting in.
That's correct.
Okay?
That's
no one
correct.
can make you successful. That's up to you. No one comes in and says, oh, by the way, because you're a black person, let me do this for you. No.
That's correct. That's correct.
No, they're not going to do that.
Yeah, we got into college through affirmative, but it didn't graduate us.
No, we had to do that homework. We had to turn in those papers.
You're not doing what, see, Dr. King felt that blacks would bring in other qualified blacks.
Just like every other group does.
Just like every other group does.
Everyone does that. Of course we would do it. We were
Right.
we knew we were opening doors for other people.
I got to get them in. He said,
Exactly.
I got to get them in there. And I said, so people would walk to you, and I don't want kids to make fun of you because they say you only got in because of affirmative action. You said, yeah.
That was it.
But I would have got in on my own if your father hadn't been so racist.
We had to pass a law to get me in here, to give me the chance that you've had all your life.
That's correct.
The first company that you were affirmative action officer was FMC?
With FMC, I was a personnel officer at Aero Development.
Okay. And then
But the
FMC.
first company I went to work was the affirmative action officer, and it was for one of their plants. It was for the automotive, the plant where they built the tanks.
Okay.
We call them armored personnel carriers. It was the biggest facility there in Fresno.
Yeah.
I mean, in San Jose.
San Jose. So, in that little plant, did you ever have to go toe to toe with some of those managers there?
Yes, all of them.
Everyone.
When I first got there, all of them.
Because they had these.
Very, very few who wanted affirmative action.
I see.
And so I went toe to toe. I'm going to hire anybody I want to. I said, well, fine. We'll take a look at it after you make the hire.
Did they not understand that the federal government was controlling the contracts that come into that company, and that the federal government had said you have to do this?
They did not understand.
I see.
Government should not be telling us what to do. I said,
Okay.
don't take their money. And stop taking the government's money and see how many of you guys get laid off tomorrow.
Exactly.
And they said, then it started to sink in like, well, wait a minute. There was no women hardly working in that facility, or they were working late shifts.
Mm-hmm.
And very few blacks worked there at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because, there weren't very many blacks in San Jose to begin with.
No, there weren't.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, but there was a lot of Latinos.
Yeah.
Who worked in San Jose. And so so the big thing was getting them to understand what we're trying to build here, and when it comes to how people are to be treated in the workplace. That was the big thing. And so once I got them to understand that, and then I started training them on the different aspects of what racism is, prejudice, and discrimination, and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them would tell me, well, we had integration in the military, and I learned to work with blacks. I said, then why is it that there's none here working?
Yeah.
None are qualified in the whole city of San Jose or the county of Santa Clara. You can't find one black man that's qualified to work here.
So you have to have your life on the line before you can even tolerate a black person being in the room with you. That's interesting.
I said, so, I understand about the military, but when I'm worried about those of you who got out.
Yeah.
And went back to your old ways.
Exactly. Well, all those military contracts, that was one of the saving graces of the Bay Area, is that at first the big companies were working for the military, so they had to follow the guidelines.
I had a manager at FMC who was just fantastic. My boss was, I always remember him. Their last name was Coliseum. He supported me 150%. He let people know right up front I support him, and that's it. And I remember I was sitting in the management meeting, my first one, and somebody walked in, and I was sitting there and go, "Why are you here?" He's the plant manager, and he goes, "He's on my staff. I invited him. He's supposed to be here. He's a manager."
Yes. See, here's the thing that the powers that be are trying to convince us, and I think all media, not just the far left, but the right too, MSNBC, NBC, CBS, all of them, they are convinced that this country is completely and totally divided.
I know.
And I don't buy that 1 minute. It is not as divided as they would like us to believe. It's totally just not.
I totally agree with you. Not only the country, the world. The prince married a black woman.
I know, isn't that something?
It was stone crazy.
I know. They show them sitting there smiling, looking at each other with love in their eyes, but underneath it'll say, "The prince isn't happy with Meghan." That's not what it looks like, you know.
I'm telling you, it's like, oh my, the vice president of the United States husband is white.
Yeah.
She's black.
Right.
And they're looking at this like, oh, the world has moved beyond you. And you're still standing back here in 1860.
Right. Trying to bring it all back.
Bring it back. You wanted to go back that way.
Right.
And I remember going into those cities that I went into in the South, and in Florida, where the Klan tried to run me out in '78, and because they didn't want any blacks to get promoted. And I walked in there, and it was like, "Well, you don't understand." I said, "No, you don't understand. I come from the corporate office, and I'm going to tell you something. We're going to promote women, and we're going to promote blacks. We're going to promote Latinos. And if any of you have a problem with that, we will give you a check this evening."
Right, right.
And you can go tell your wife or your spouse, "I got fired because I'm racist.
Right.
I don't want to work with no black people, and I don't want to work with no," and see what your wife tells you. And so you need to understand, this is not your company.
Yeah.
This is our company, all of us. And we're going to integrate it, and we're going to promote the best and the brightest that we have.
Right.
And if you have a problem with that, you can't work for us.
Right.
I'm quite sure here in Lakeland, Florida, there's some white company that will give you a good job and with that attitude. And I said, "Have a good life." Right. And when I made that statement that at 5 o'clock, nobody showed up with the wanting their check.
Is that right? They changed their mind on that subject, didn't they?
Right. All of a sudden, I come back the next day and there was no Klan signs.
Nothing.
No Klan signs in the parking lot.
Right.
And there's people lined up outside this door wanting to work for FMC. It was the biggest employer in that little town. Everybody wanted to work there.
Okay. Yeah.
I said, "We got people lined up ready to come in here to take your job." So,
think about it. You
can't abide by our rules.
So when you started off in the affirmative action, did you have a goal of changing just your environment or changing the whole industry?
My goal was to change the country of the United States.
Okay. Big dreams.
I wanted to. I hate, and even to this day, I hate racism. I hate prejudice. I hate discrimination. I hate sexism. I hate it. And I don't think it has any place in the American society.
Right. Tell me this. When you got the job with Yvonne Braithwaite, is that how you pronounce your name? And came to the county of Los Angeles, did you see anything there that really shook you up?
I saw a separate country inside of a state.
Wow.
The city of Los Angeles is one of the most prejudiced cities in the United States. Blacks live on the south side, whites live on the west side. Latinos live on the east side. Because everybody, and then you had an Armenian group who said, we don't want anyone servicing us but Armenians. But you had that mentality. Germans, we don't want nobody serving us but Germans. Asians, we don't want nobody servicing us but Asians. Wait a minute.
Mm.
And so you not only do you have to deal with a workforce, but you had to deal with a county which has that mentality of thinking that this is our side of town, and we don't want nobody else over here. It was and in the black community, we're not getting anything. They don't do nothing for us. I said, then what are you doing for yourself?
Hello.
I said, you keep voting people in the office. When's the last time you sit down and talk to your elected official?
That's
you
right.
got the poorest of the poor. Mm-hmm. You got the worst schools. And why? And I said, it's because of a tax base. The tax base in South Central was very low. Why? You own nothing.
Right.
And you have to stop blaming people and pull together as a group. I wanted to run for supervisor, but then I said, I'm not going to run because I'm ahead of my time. These people don't understand me. The churches were powerful in Los Angeles.
Yes, there you go.
Extremely powerful in the black community. If the minister didn't say, do this, it probably wasn't going to be done. That's what it is. You're up here waiting for your supervisor and your city council person to do something for you.
Mm-hmm. But then when they do go to them and they tell them and they get a negative, they go back and say, oh, it's not going to work.
Go back and sit down.
Uh-huh.
And then the other ones will say what? I told you.
But see, what they should be saying is, we got the wrong guy in place.
Gang control the other part of it.
Wow.
I talked to a group of gang members and they said, well, you need to understand this is our territory. I said, really? I said, so what do you own that you control? You control nothing.
Nothing.
It's all a mentality that you control this. You control nothing here. That you're killing each other. You're killing some of our best and brightest minds. You're just wiping them out. Mm-hmm. And the ones you're not wiping out, they're going to prison for life.
That's right.
So his children don't even have to compete against you.
That's right. That's right.
Dealing with your local community. When they're not performing, do not have a problem with voting another one in.
Right. Get the right people at the beginning.
I said, when you guys start perking up, owning stuff, building businesses, then watch.
So, my dear, on that note, since we have solved all of the problems of the world.
Yes, we always do. I can tell the people about my 3 books now.
Oh, don't you? Oh, that's right. You tell them about your 3 books. You tell them right now, and I'll be sure and edit it in.
Okay, the first book I wrote when I started writing again was called Dreamer in the Fields.
Okay.
And it was my life as a migrant farm worker kid from the time I was 5 and up until the time I left the fields at the age of 10 when I went into foster care. But I still worked out in the fields and foster care. I worked on a farm. Mm-hmm. But I didn't have to, but I just wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And then it talks about going through high school and grammar school. And the first time I was called the N-word, and then a teacher upheld that. And that's the first time I faced racism that kind of way. Then it goes through all the things that happened up until I graduated from high school and graduated from college and went into the military. Then the second book I wrote was called The Sermon at the Coliseum. Mm-hmm. And I was always a religious person, but I wasn't religious in the way that a lot of people are. And I used to argue with my dad, my foster dad, who was also a minister, because I didn't understand a lot of stuff in the church. I didn't understand why seemed to be all black people in black churches were poor. I never could get over that. It used to really bother me that we all were poor and nobody was doing anything about it, and we were all so religious. Right? And so I also was of this understanding that I would always say, I don't believe that Jesus would not come back to this planet in some kind of way to check on things or to see things. And so that's what the sermon at the Coliseum is about. It's a spiritual figure who comes back to the planet. So throughout the book, he does certain things. He heals this young man. Yeah, but the best part I like is that he goes into East Los Angeles, which I've never seen books on Christ going into East Los Angeles. Then he goes into the Black community, and he sits down and he talks to Black people, and he tells them. And they said, well, Jesus, you did it. God never did anything against slavery, and he let these people get off. And the guy goes, did he let them get off? Do you remember a civil war that killed 700,000 of them? He could have just said, okay, Emancipation Proclamation, and move on. He said, no, the Emancipation Proclamation is not enough. I want to do a sermon at the Coliseum for the whole world to listen to. And then my sisters always look at me like, how do you make up this stuff? Where does this stuff come from in your head? I said, oh. In the third book is The House at 1806 North Canyon Drive. It's a story about a woman who grew up in Louisiana, and she's Creole, and her family had come in from France. They'd never been slaves because they were Creole, so they didn't make them slaves. But the family become very successful and very rich. And so this young lady marries into that family. But her mother is people knew her mother practiced voodoo. And her mother would put spells on people she didn't like. And so so the mother was okay with the daughter marrying into this family. But she tells the daughter, I have given you the powers to control him if he tries to get out of line. And that's what that book is about. And I am not going to tell you the ending.
Oh, I know the ending because I read the book.
Yeah, okay. And so you see, you saw what happened.
Yes, I did. Well, we won't let anyone know. They have to go find it. But I got to get that book on the Coliseum. I got to get that one. That was the one I hadn't read. I read the first one and the third one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's the way I write. I mean, I don't. Things come into my head sometimes in the middle of the night, and I get up and write them down. And God sends me messages sometimes when I'm driving, and I like to. But that's what my writing is about. And so I just come up with these stories and.
Very organic.
But I had a friend who also read the 1806, and she said, I thought I had it figured out. She said, you can completely fool me because I had it right. I had it. I said, okay.
Down.
Go happen.
Wrong. Well, you did a good job, buddy. You did a good job. It was a nice little ride there. Yeah. So I got to get the Coliseum. All right, kid. Well, I'm going to let you off the hook. So thank you, Johnny, for cooperating and supporting me in my little project.
Thank you, John, for sharing your life with us and being an example for us. Those that say I can't do it all will realize that you can do it all, just one thing at a time. Mr. Hill has written an autobiography and 2 books of fiction, Dreamer in the Fields and The Sermon in the Coliseum. Both can be purchased on Amazon. Mr. Hill has started on his 4th book. We wish you all the best in your next publication. Thank you, Johnny, and thank you for listening.